Hello, everyone who have joined us so far, and I believe a lot of you are on your way to this session. So, this is week 4 classroom session, and this is the last technical session of this course. I welcome all of you again. I believe and I hope that your learning experience has been going well so far, and you are learning some new concepts, and if not new, probably you're revising something that you have already learned before, and you are able to find some new skills, competencies that you can use in your workplace once this course is finished. This particular session, this is linked to module 6 of the course, which is the downstream functions. In this session, we will focus on outsourcing. So outsourcing is something which has been focused on in the past few years, and it has been focused a lot by international donors, technical agencies, and also by several ministries of health, because as we discussed in one of the sessions previously as well, that last mile distribution has been a challenge everywhere, and uh, the central medical stores or the Ministry of Health, they are not always they not always find it easy to reach that last mile, to reach those health facilities on time, or in the or with the right amount of product quantities that is required for those health facilities. And sometimes you must have seen that the responsibility of distribution is actually given to those facilities themselves. So they are supposed to come to their nearest warehouse and pick up the products, sometimes in their personal vehicles, sometimes in contracted vehicles, and those vehicles may not always have the right transportation conditions, which are required for pharmaceutical products. And that's why we have also seen many times there has been pilferage during transportation, theft during transportation, sometimes accidents happening during transportation, because the right vehicles are not used, the right processes are not used. And so lately, the process of outsourcing has been becoming quite popular, using private sector logistics providers, who already have those dedicated vehicles, the right type of vehicles which are required for transporting pharmaceutical products. And in this session, we will look a bit closely into some of the requirements for outsourcing. When is outsourcing beneficial, and is it just only transportation that can be outsourced? Can we outsource other functions of supply chains? So that is what we are going to discuss and learn in this session. But before we start, I will hand it over to Andrea to take us through a few points of what is happening in this week. Andrea, over to you.
Thank you, Sanjay. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So last week was all about procurement, and this week we are moving on to inventory control and warehousing and storage. So we now have, so the majority of participants following the course calendar and being up to date with the course. And the good news is that 2 more participants have started the course and have caught up with the course, Kalkidan and Oluwapalumi. And also you can see that this is a snapshot of the leaderboard for this morning. The leaderboard, as you know, is being constantly updated. It is through your activities, and you gain points through various quizzes, completing the other activities, and so on. So it is good to see active participation there. So I think we can move on to the next slide. And this is a discussion from the 6th module. And Princely has shared pictures of the warehouse at Siname and CBCHS, the Cameroon Baptist Convention Health Services. I think it is good to see that, and it would be great if others could also share pictures of the warehouse of their workplace if they can. So there are discussions happening in the course in module 6. So this is a discussion about FIFO versus FAFO. So also we have other discussions like push versus pull, and the majority of responses have said that you have been using a hybrid model in your country, where some categories of products are distributed using push and others using pull. I think it would be good to discuss the challenges of both systems, and in which scenarios would you use push and which scenarios you would use pull. The floor is open for you to speak. Also, we have noticed that like most of you have not been getting your quizzes right the first time. I mean, you will get gems only if you get it right the first time. So we would like to know why this is happening. I see that Romeo wants to speak. Over to you, Romeo.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thanks. Well, it's a very dynamic. Good morning, or good afternoon, good night, bonjour, bonsoir. I don't know where's your time right now, but I just want to put into the table some of the scenarios where we've been through a pulling or a pushing situation. Well, the COVID-19 emergency has put us on a different kind of scenarios. Every single one has been proved, and sometimes when everything has been estimated on time, they are trying to push that and try to deliver it on time. But our services are demanding a lot more supplies, and medicines and medical supplies are just being consumed in a high speed trend, and this is coming out of any forecasting process that has been handled before. So on those cases, emergency cases, sometimes trying to pull out of the time where everything has been quantified and estimated is also some scenarios that have been handled here. People is being supplied on time, but still we were consuming much more than we were expecting. And in those cases, we're trying to perform some feedback in the way that they can provide us as soon as possible, but much more medicines or medical supplies, even though they have been trying to do estimations on time. So emergency cases has been something that has been pulling and pushing in a very dynamic way.
Sorry, Romeo, just was there a question there, or it was just a comment? I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
Yeah, it was a comment. Okay. I thought Andrea was trying to just open up the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Are there any, okay, Kenfrey, please, you can speak as well. You've raised your hand. Sorry, Kenfrey, yeah, please go on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
I have a comment on what Andrea just said about the quizzes. I think, especially in the last quiz, I have some appeals to make because in the first one is concerning question number 1 and question number 4, which I got wrong.
Kenfrey, can you tell us which quiz are you talking about?
The last quiz that is preceding this this lesson.
Okay.
I think
Yes.
it should be the one that had 10 questions. The one that had 10 questions, I'm sure.
Yes.
I'm sure that's the ones he's referring to.
Yes, exactly that one. The first one was asking, select the key storage standards for warehouses and stores. And apparently security of warehouses is not one of them. And if it was right to look at the additional materials that were posted on the site, I read somewhere that they are comparing the U model and the true model, in which security is a good consideration. So maybe if the trainers are expecting us to look at the extra materials, then maybe they should be considering them in the quizzes. The next one, from McGill's lesson, that's lesson module 6, lesson 2. That is affecting question. The question that was saying, select the activities of an inbound process, and apparently stock management was not one of them. But from the lesson, Gill says that products are transferred to their designated locations as per warehouse layout and product segmentation, and the stock keeping records are updated. And that to me sounds like stock management. I could be wrong, but you know how crazy the run for the points are. So I would like the organizers to please look at those.
Okay.
those.
What I would suggest is, Kenfrey, I've noted them down, although, but if there are other people who have similar issues with some of the questions, if you can either put in the Q&A of the discussions or write an email to us, we will look at those questions, and if your concerns are genuine, and if getting those questions right will get you full points, then we will award those points. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Please, everyone who's having any issues with the questions, please send us an email or write in the Q&A discussion. I see another hand is raised. Esiola, if please speak. You have raised your hand.
Okay. Good evening or good day. I was just going to say that I also have similar issue with the question, just as the last speaker explained. So I guess I'll just follow what you said.
Great.
You get us, sir?
Okay. It's actually great to hear from you finally in the 4th week. First of all, welcome. This is the first time we're actually hearing your voice and looking at you. So that's really refreshing. We have another fellow participant from Nigeria. Otherwise, Audu was left alone to represent a very big country. Now there are 2 of you. So I think you can represent Nigeria very well. I believe, by the way, your point is noted, and let's move on. Go on. Anyone?
Did you get us, sir?
Sorry, say again. Sorry, it's not very clear. Your voice is not very clear.
Okay, I was explaining that most of the meeting time.
Okay, Siola, I'm sorry, your voice has stopped. We would like to move on. We would give you an opportunity to speak at a later stage. Okay, so your voice was not coming, but we will give you an opportunity to speak at a later stage. Now, just before I move on quickly, if there are any other participant who would like to talk about the challenges of push or pull models which are being used in their countries, this is the time. Otherwise, now we will move to the next session. Princely, you have raised your hand. Go on. Princely, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I could not do that in time.
No problem.
Okay, good evening. Greetings, everybody, where we are, whatever time around the globe. It's a wonderful time again together. So I would like to talk about the push system, which is actually affecting our own organization where we work. You will come to realize that if you cut across some of the health facilities in the CBC health services, you will see that you will notice an array of donated items that comes from abroad, particularly some from US and some from Europe. When the donated item comes, they will just push it to your station, whether it is expiring in a week time or in a month time or in a year time. They don't bother about that. They just want to push it out. At the end of the day, it becomes stock in your drugstore. It becomes work for you to manage them. It becomes work for you to select the ones that are good for you to use, which has a longer expiry date. And at the end of the day, you yourself, the storekeeper, you get tired before even going home. Talking about that, you realize that to me, it would have been preferable if they could have actually selected stations that are so busy that could handle such stock items, because outpatient services of about, let's say, 50 per day, they may not be able to handle such. A station whereby they don't have specialist medical doctors in their numbers, they may not be able to handle such donated items. Let me give you an example in Bopi Baptist Hospital in Douala, where I used to work about some 2 years back. We had donated items that came from the US, which has to do with diabetes and hypertension management, mostly combination products of hydrochlorothiazide and ramipril and the other combination items, maybe sitagliptin and the rest with metformin together. They came, and when we look at the expiry dates, they were just about 2 months to expire. At the end of the day, a huge stock of it got expired in our hands, and we were forced to see how we can push it back to the central pharmacy. So you realize that cost on the highway was lost. Logistics became a problem in the drugstore back in Douala then when I was there. And even the drugstore even had no space. So we're struggling to create space for those donated items to be where they are. So you realize that if at all there will be donated items, and they notice that maybe in the course of receiving them from abroad, if they could actually check out the expiry date for these products, it will equally help the health facilities. So that is a very big challenge in our setting that we are going through in as much as push system is concerned. Thank you. That's what I had to chip in.
Thank you, Princely. You actually have touched upon a very critical aspect, which actually cuts across not just transportation and distribution models, but it has a touch point in procurement as well. Because when we talk about donations, except for the fact that the organizations are not paying anything to receive those products, it still has to follow the procurement processes of that country or of that organization. Now, more often than not, what we see is that they don't. Ideally, they should follow the procurement process. So just like, you would procure products from a supplier where you would have this clause that all the products that you're going to supply must have more than 75% or 80% of shelf life upon arrival in the country. Then some other similar clauses like they must be registered, they must follow some quality assurance systems. These clauses are also required in the donation agreements that your organization or your country procurement system, whoever, agrees with the donors. because more often than not, what we have seen in the past, Gilles can talk about it from his experience in Oxfam as well, but I believe Oxfam manages these donations, would have managed these donations very well. But we have seen so many cases where countries would donate those items which are almost nearing the expiry, and by the time they reach the country and the facilities, uh, they are almost expired, and the facilities are then left, uh, you know uh, to dispose them or send them back, which actually incurs additional cost. Yeah, so it's not just a matter of what distribution system you're using here, it is also a matter of how that donation was processed. So it's actually also a matter of your procurement policies for donation or donated products. So you being in a warehouse, or you being in the downstream functions, should put pressure on your friends who are in the upstream processes, who are working as a procurement officers, to make sure that whatever donations that are being received must come through a vetted process. Okay, so that's the way to go. Gilles, I will also ask you to share some experience that you've had during your Oxfam days, or any other places that you have worked where donated goods were, the main thing, the way, the products were being received. Over to you.
Thank you. I think this problem of quality, not only the expiry dates, but even the quality of the donated good is an issue. We've seen places where for instance, receiving, adult biscuits for therapeutic feeding, for instance. And when you receive that, you have no way to use them. It's not made for infants who are under severe malnutrition, but then you're still receiving that. So what I think, it's the issue is most of the time where I've seen this kind of donation arriving like that is because they were not based on technical ground, they were based on political ground. So in some organization like Oxfam, for instance, who is very independent, we could refuse them very easily. But in broader organizations like the UN, sometimes donors or government who are under, a strange relationship with donor because they are on one side receiving funds from them. So when they come and they say, oh, by the way, we also have a donation for this or that, even if it doesn't match the requirement, people may accept it. So I really think, yes, there is a technical issues that needs to be raised. In the comment, it was raised that, sometimes some people in the chain are not aware about the impact that delaying goods or vaccines at the custom, for instance, can have on the final agreement. So yes, there are some some communication grounds that can be done, but unfortunately there is also a political aspect of it. And that one, I think, needs to be addressed by raising again those issues so that everyone is aware about the consequences. But sometimes if you are the big boss of a pharmaceutical supply agency, or if you're at a high level in the Ministry of Health and you're doing a deal with international partners, I don't know, any government or big company who are also funding some activities, you will accept to receive products which may not be exactly those you need, where you think, okay, at least we secure this one, so we manage that. And yes, it has cost. Yes, you need to manage that. It has also reputation risk beyond the cost, reputation risk, because if people in a county or in a place are seeing that you are destroying medicines while they need them, just because they arrived late or when the expiry date was too short, this is also an issue on your reputation. So all this is something really that needs to be raised, and thank you for raising it. I mean, this pull model is very, very important. It needs to be flexible. There is no one size fits all. Even in one country, it's not one size fits all. It depends on of course, as it's been said in the discussion, it depends really on the range of product. Some products are a no-brainer. You can do a push model. I'm thinking things like, for instance, chloroquine or this kind of thing when you can use to treat water or this kind of thing. They have very long expiry dates. Yeah, they are, you can produce them. Others, more specific, needs to have a real pool model, which is really based on the real knowledge of the context.
Thank you, Gilles. I just have one last point. Then I see another raised hand and someone who's joining us for the first time. So I would give him a couple of minutes to speak. But just one last point on the donation. As a best practice, what I've seen in some organizations who are working in the humanitarian space is that every year they release a list of products that they're expecting for donations. Now, I don't know in Cameroon for CBC Health Services if you have such a list, but there are some organizations, from the past experience of what they see that, okay, what are the various products which they generally get as donation versus the products that they actually require as donation. So what they do is every year they would publish this list and they send it to their donors who generally donate products, and they also put it on their websites or other places so that organizations who want to donate products, they go and they check that list, and if that product is there in the list, then they would donate it. So that's one of the best practices which I've seen in some of the humanitarian organizations. Now with that, Terence, I see you have raised your hand. Please, if you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. Terence, go on. Terence, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
We can hear you, Terence. Go on. Okay, I'm sorry, Terence. We are not able to hear you. I'm muting you, and we have to move forward. Gilles, over to you with the first section. Oh, you're muted, Gilles.
Hello.
Terence is trying to speak.
Terence, we are not able to hear you. Why don't you put your comment in the chat and then we will take it up. But it's good to see you here. We have been waiting to see you or hear your voice for the last 3 weeks, but it's good that you are here. But please put your comment on the chat and we'll take it up. Gilles, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Just before, so just wanted to reply to one point which was made about what is upstream, what is downstream, in terms of supply chain. And it's true that stock management is just at the middle of upstream versus downstream. So yeah, if you ask me personally, I think it's more like downstream, it's more on the distribution side. I think the upstream, downstream stops at the receptions of the inbound. So anything which comes into the door of the warehouse, I would consider as upstream. Well, as soon as it is within the warehouse and part of stock management, I would consider it as downstream. Of course, all this depends on your point of view, where you are sitting, where you are located, if you are in a sub warehouse or if you are in the main warehouse, all this change. It can be, again, one thing that I want, we are proposing definition, we are giving, our interpretation of the situation. And of course, it's not one size fits all again. In some context, in some organization, you will use different words, inbound, outbound, upstream, downstream. All those words are the ones that can be used. And I think, and it's part of this course also, it's up to you at the end of the day when you go back to your organization or when you will launch your own, and we are moving to it, maybe you will want to launch your own third-party logistics in your own country, or you will want, it's you will have to define your terms, your criteria, what terms you want to use and how you want to use it for your own organization. So I think it's good that you challenge, the interpretation we are giving, because it's not, there is not one size fits all again. And so we are giving our interpretation and we are very happy to be challenged on that one. And then moving on to the course. This course is about outsourcing, how to manage outsourcing. So the session flow is we will go through concept of outsourcing and how to approach the outsourcing, and we'll look at the case example. We'll hope you'll have some comment if you've looked at the document that was shared. Yeah, the rules about asking questions and everything. So outsourcing is a very important part of supply chain and logistics. You cannot do any supply chain project, supply chain organization without thinking about what part am I going to outsource, what part am I going to keep internally. And this is, you can decide to keep everything internally within your organization. That's a choice. Everything can be internally, or you can choose to outsource. Probably would not say everything, but you can choose to outsource a high level of your activities. So mostly in public health supply chain, what activities do we see as being outsourced? We see the procurement process. We can see the warehousing, the transportation, which can be both in-country and international transportation. Security, that one is very often the first thing that is going to be outsourced, and information system. Okay, so these are some examples of what can be done as with outsourced to a third-party logistics, a third-party provider who is going to perform, to manage all those services for your organization on your behalf. Well, it is written here that transportation is the most common, and that's true. Security, of course, also is very often outsourced. Again, it depends on the context, it depends on the market, it depends on your own organization, it depends on what the private sector can offer. And it depends also on the type of contract, for instance, you are giving to some of your own staff, because sometimes if you have a public health organization, you are working with civil servants, and outsourcing some of their work is not easy. I just want to mention that we talk here about third-party logistics. We are now more and more talking also about four-party logistics and even five-party logistics, fifth-party logistics, fourth-party logistics, and fifth-party logistics. So the difference is about the responsibility you take over, the scope of responsibility you're going to take, and the level of autonomy you can have as an external agent. So the more the private sector organization will grow in autonomy, the more we will call it a third or a fourth or a fifth level activity. So third-party logistics, mostly you outsource some of the activities which are here. Very clear, very specific activities is outsourced to a private sector company. If you move to fourth-party logistics, now you're going to outsource more than just the technical management of an activity, be it transport, be it warehousing, or you will also transfer to them the management of the information, the knowledge, the expertise, and sometimes even the relationship with the client. So they will have a level of autonomy, a level also of accountability towards your external partner that will grow very high. Why in a third-party logistic transporter, the third party is not visible to your client. And if you move to fifth-party logistics, now this fifth-party logistics is where they have a huge level of expertise in supply chain. And not only they will manage sometimes the relationship with your customer, not only they will manage your information system, but they will also advise you, on your strategic vision. And sometimes they will even take decision on the strategic flow of how and distribution. So when you move to fifth-party logistics, you've kind of totally hand over everything which is linked to supply chain. So to make those choices, of course, you need to look at a list of criteria. And if we look at what are the criteria or the element that you want to look at to know if you need to outsource or if you don't need to outsource, some of the things in public is the staff turnover, the skills and the competencies and the staff turnover. So which control do you have on your own personnel? Which control do you have on the competencies which are within your organization? So that's really an element where if you are a MOH organization, maybe your skills are not completely on supply chain or transportation or security. Of course, And so you want to outsource that so that you can focus really on stock management of your own specific item, because you think exactly as we mentioned before, if you outsource that to somebody else, they will not know how to manage the expiry date, they will not know how to manage the cold chain and the different characteristics of it. So this element about staff is very important. Staff turnover also is something. If you are not an HR, if you don't have strong HR in your organization, you may not want to keep on managing, this high turnover, and you want to outsource that. The limited resource also at your disposal. Infrastructure costs a lot, trucks cost a lot, they need to be maintained, you need to have budget to manage all that. And sometimes in some of those organizations, it's not always possible to have all those funds to manage properly in the long run all those activities. You may require investment in information system also. When you outsource some of your activities, you can ask the third-party logistics or the fourth-party logistics to invest in system instead of you making the investment, and you use their own system. The other element, let me jump to the fourth element right now, which is the variable demand. If you are limited in resources, you will want to have an activity, you pay your activity according to the level of activity. You pay for your services according to the level of activities. So that's often something, maybe it works better for private sectors than for public sector, where private sector is making money based on the level of activity, which is not always the case in public sector. But at least you are only paying high amount of logistics cost when you have actually high level of activities. And in the public sector, even if it's whether it is financed by the government or whether it is financed by external partners like donors, it is always a plus to be able to pay high when you have high activity and pay low when you have low activity. So moving to fixed.
Can I please add one point here? The reason why we're talking about demand here is because if it is an entirely in-house operation, that means that the organization would need to buy trucks, would need to recruit drivers, would have to purchase fuel, would have to pay for maintenance contracts for those vehicles as well. Now, if there are certain seasons when your demand is low, which means your truck is idle, your drivers are idle, however, you still are paying their salaries, you are still paying for some sort of fuel, you're still paying for some sort of maintenance contract. So that's the amount of money that is kind of getting wasted rather than being used for purchasing products. So if you have a contract with a 3PL using a variable demand method, then in those times when your demand is less, the demand coming from the facilities is less, you are not actually paying for all these things that I've mentioned. Yeah, so that's what Gilles is trying to say. Gilles, over to you.
Yeah, that's really we could mention, variable demand and fixed cost. What you want to avoid is to have fixed cost when you have a variable demand. So moving to a third party, you have variable demand and variable cost. So that's the key behind that. And limited volume, quite often, I think that's in line with this. That's a consequence or one of the reasons why you want to move to variable cost. It's you don't want to scale your system because you need to scale your system for the highest level of activities. So you don't want to do that if you know that half of the month you are just on half of your capacity. The good thing with the third-party logistics that they will work with other clients. So they can have a very high infrastructure, a very big pipeline, and of which you will use only part of it, and it can grow and move according to the season. And then finally, the last point is inefficient service delivery. Yes, again, a third-party logistics must have good infrastructure. They are serving various clients. They have a large portfolio of activities. So normally they are able to provide services that you may not provide. One example, is going to the last mile, the famous last mile. you know, for a private company which is working for profit, they will know how to mutualize costs and try to be able to get all those costs mutualized so that they can reach places where a single company will not be able to do this investment. And private sector, you know, if they are in the sector, if they go, they are here for business, so they cannot, you know, they have this this necessity to thrive and this necessity to be efficient. Otherwise, they are just out of business. So those are some of the questions. I mean, and now there is a question to you of some of those points that we are looking at. I don't know if someone want to reflect on this and tell us, you know, if outsourcing is recommended everywhere, or in which case it would be recommended, which case it should not be recommended, and maybe you want to talk about your own experience going through that. Any comment? Anyone has gone through outsourcing projects recently, or?
Yeah, Princely, please go on.
I would like to say that outsourcing is good if and only if the service provider from within out of the company is having the capabilities and the credentials to actually carry out the process, of which if not, it will normally fail. If you look at the scenarios that we went through from the notes that was sent to us before this lecture, I caught up the case of Uganda, where Uganda succeeded with outsourcing, and it was really efficient because the country could not meet up with last mile delivery. But bringing it now with a private sector organization, they were able to actually go to the last mile delivery until they succeeded from 2015, as per what we're discussing. So outsourcing actually depends if and all the company that you are coming into partner with has the capabilities and the credentials to succeed with you. Without which, I prefer that if at all you cannot do outsourcing, it means that you need to invest to bring in more scenarios that can be able to help you push through to get to last mile delivery. So that's what I can say.
Thank you. I think you're very right. The development and the presence of a strong private sector company is essential. Otherwise, yeah. Otherwise, you can't.
It's also coming in this session soon. Kenfrey, you have a point. Please go on.
I want to agree with Princely about the capacity, because in some of the dispensations we find ourselves in, and you made a very good point about the politics and the governance of the society. Because sometimes you find there are companies that don't have capacity, and yet they are given these contracts. But rather than being given the contracts on merit, they are given the contracts based on tokenism or any other form of favoritism, which affects service delivery. So the political side of it is something that needs to be that affects the success or the failure thereof of an outsourced operation like that of the third-party logistics.
Yep, absolutely. We are going to discuss this as well. But let's quickly move on to the next slide. Gilles, over to you with this small case.
Yeah, just one last thing to say about outsourcing. One of the conditions is of course, there are external conditions, but there is also internal condition. And one of the good things we used to say is you don't outsource a problem. So you need to solve your problem first, then you can think about outsourcing. But if you're not clear within you, so that's why I think the criteria that was shared are important, because they are not problems. They are more like generic issues that are affecting a company. They are big parameters, but it's not per se an internal problem. Yeah, I mean, there is a World Food Program case that you can read here. World Food Program is, they don't like to say that, but their main skills, their main responsibilities is really logistics. And you know, they have a large number of trucks, 5,000 trucks globally. It's a huge fleet. They have 800 of those trucks, which are their own vehicles. As a priority, use them in context where there is no, exactly what you said, you know, there is no way you can outsource because either the companies are not here, either the security is not good enough, there is no maintenance. So then they come and they bring their own resources, but they are extremely skilled at logistics. You know, they are a food agency. Food is all about transportation. Sorry, maybe I should not say so, but because of course there are other criteria about quality but the main thing is being able to reach in good condition some very remote area. So I think what we've seen, what we can see with them is that of course they are a huge organization, but they are also very flexible. They are very iterative. They review regularly their contract. They are very specific in the kind of information that they request. They are doing tender for like every 6 months. They are reviewing the tender, they are relaunching tender globally for big, large global contract, locally for small, specific located contract. They sign contract for 6 to 12 months, with very specific criteria for success. So really, they are taking this very, very seriously, again, because they know that supply chain is the key of their success. I think they've been awarded a few years ago the Nobel Prize, and it's not for nothing. They've been awarded the Nobel Prize last year, thank you. Last year, the Nobel Prize, and they've been awarded the Nobel Prize because of supply chain, or thanks to supply chain. That one is something that needs to be recognized. If they did not have the supply chain they would not be able to do that. And we've seen them in many countries, doing indeed fantastic work. I think you've seen also there was a case study that was shared a bit earlier. I don't know if you've had the time all to read it. The KV case study. One thing that I think we also need to learn, and maybe before I see if somebody wants to comment on that, is also internal readiness. Internal readiness for outsourcing. Outsourcing is a change process, it's a transformation process. And you will not be able to do a transformation process against your own people. So, people can fear change, can fear transformation, can fear all those kind of changes which are happening in your life. You can fear for your own job, you can fear also for your working condition. You can fear for your own competence to do the new job you're going to be offered. I mean, there is all those elements which are coming, and many more certainly, about are you going to work in the same location? Will you have to travel a lot? So what I want to say is that also beyond the technical element, you also need to work internally on your transformation. And I think that's one of the things that come out quite clearly on top of technical element of all those transformation things. Sometimes if it's just a decision, which is a donor is coming, or the government make a decision, they want to reduce costs, they want to move to a variable cost instead of fixed cost. So they take a decision very top down. It will be very difficult to get the buy-in from all the people who are going to be key in making this transformation a success. So that's maybe the point I want to end with, just before we hear if you have some comment on this World Food Program, or if you have comment on the GAVI.
Yeah. So if there are any comments right now, if you have any questions so far, please you can ask. Otherwise, I will take the next section. There is a comment in chat. Example of these LSPs that WFP uses. There are so many logistics service providers that WFP is using. We can possibly go and check WFP's website. I'm sure there would be some listed there. There may be some listed in the case study itself. So this screenshot is actually from the Gavi case study itself. There might be some listed over there. I don't remember any from top of my head, but I can get back to you on this, Kenfrey. So if there are no other comments, let me just pause for 10 seconds. and I will move on with this section. Okay. So as Gilles was mentioning, so you know, you don't outsource your problems. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. So you don't outsource your problems. So when you're making decisions for outsourcing, the first the first prerequisite is to look at your internal conditions. That are you as an organization even ready to outsource some or all functions of supply chain? Okay. So now, as Gilles was mentioning, now we're going beyond 3PL, we're going to 4PL as well. So 4PL can also mean that you are kind of outsourcing almost an entire supply chain function to a different organization who's actually managing it for you. So one of the key reasons why organizations do that is because so that they can focus on their core competency. Now, if we look into health, uh, you know, the ministries of health and similar organizations, their core competency is actually not supply chain. Their core competency is, looking at the disease burdens, looking at what kind of treatment pattern should be there, surveilling the population so that they can identify any outbreaks, epidemics, and managing those, coming out with policies, making sure that there are processes and policies in place to keep citizens healthy. Okay, so that's in history, we see that that's the core competency of a Ministry of Health. Now, there are so many countries where ministries of health are also involved in supply chain. Yes, many countries, they have actually given that process to a dedicated wing or a parastatal organization reporting to the Ministry of Health. But still, if you see, the people who are managing those processes are still who have background of health. We, as a pharmacist, as a doctor, we don't really have a background in supply chain, and our core competency from when we started our profession was not into supply chain. So it begs the question, that is transportation, is warehousing, is procurement, are they the core competency of the organization? Do we have skilled people who have education and experience in those areas and can also manage health products? Yeah. So if those core competencies are not in-house, then that makes a case to outsource those functions. So that's one condition. That's the first condition. Then the second thing is, there are so many functions that an organization is managing. Another condition to outsource would be when you review your performance in various functions, and if there are a few functions which are always lagging behind. So some functions which never perform well, maybe because of many reasons. One can be competencies, second can be infrastructure, policies, so on and so forth. Okay. So then there is another scope of outsourcing, that if those functions can be outsourced which are not performing well, can it make a difference to the system? That's the second condition. The third condition is the ability to manage the provider itself. Now, if it is a third party logistics, the accountability is still on the organization. So for example, if WFP is working with logistics service providers, the accountability is still on WFP. It is not on the logistics service provider, which means it is WFP's responsibility to manage the vendor. Uh, it is WFP's responsibility to make sure that they have the right processes in place to manage the vendor, and they are also monitoring their performance in a timely manner. Okay, so if your organization is not able to do that, then you might not want to go for outsourcing. because that would mean having a dedicated team of people who are actually managing the vendor itself. And then finally, the last condition is it technically and politically feasible? Sometimes politicians would not want to outsource. Sometimes, organizations would want to, leadership would want to keep all the functions within the system so that they have a hold of it. There may be some financial barriers. You may not have that kind of a system where you can allocate public money to a private sector organization, and there may be some other issues as well. So we also talk about whether outsourcing as a procedure is technically and politically feasible. So before we look at the private sector market, before we look at the capacity of the providers, we need to look internally, whether to see that are we ready to outsource? Do we have uh, processes to manage the vendors, and which areas are we going to outsource? Okay, so these are the key things that needs to be understood before taking the outsourcing decision. Now, once these conditions are met, then we look at the external conditions. And the first thing is analysis of the private sector market to understand actually who are the organizations who are actually going to do this work. For example, if you are outsourcing procurement, are there any organizations who can actually do the procurement process on the organization's behalf? Are there enough providers in the market so that there is a healthy competition and you get the best price available for that service? Okay, and in terms of transportation, will that provider be able to reach all the required geographies? Okay, we will come to a case study later of Uganda, where we will see that when they outsourced their last mile distribution, the providers were able to reach all their districts eventually. Okay, so the providers must have that geographical reach as well. Okay, second thing is the cost benefit analysis. Now, this is a key thing, because if outsourcing has to have some sort of value, to the organization. It can either have a value in terms of service, or it can have a value in terms of cost. Okay, and both the things have to be understood and discussed. So the first question that we can ask is, if we outsource, will the overall cost of managing that function, so for example, if you're outsourcing transportation, so will the overall cost of transportation be cheaper if we outsource than if we manage it by ourselves? And the second question that needs to be asked is that, will the outsourcing operation lead to improvement in service delivery? So for example, if your current service delivery in percentage is 60%, and the outsourcing provider is also doing it at 60%, then you are not actually getting any value. There has to be a case where your service delivery should go from 60% to 90%, using the outsourcing provider. So you need to ask your organizations, people who are involved in this process need to ask these questions before selecting any vendor. And the third condition, which is external, is the process maturity of the companies, who will be, or who are going to be the logistics providers for you. How mature are their processes? How are they following good storage and distribution practices? Because see, here we are not supplying soap, we are not supplying any other FMCG. Okay, we're actually supplying pharmaceutical products which get affected because of slight changes in temperature, slight changes in humidity, and sometimes they can break, they can spill. So all those providers must have strict process to follow storage and distribution practices. Okay, and whether those providers can manage within the lead times that you want and at the volumes that you want. So again, going back to the point that Gilles was mentioning, that there can be variable demand over a year, for example. Some months can be very busy, while other months can be less busy. Will the providers be able to align with your system? Because if you are outsourcing your transportation or distribution to an organization, you don't ask your facilities, health facilities, to change their process because a new company is now distributing. You want that company to be able to manage within the current environment in which you are providing services as a supply chain organization to the health facilities. So the process maturity of existing logistics service providers is very important to look at, okay, while making the decisions on outsourcing. So these are the external conditions. So first we looked at the internal conditions as to how ready we are as an organization and which functions that we want to outsource. And then second, looking at the external condition, looking at the private sector market, cost benefit analysis, and maturity of maturity of providers. Okay, so this is very important whenever you go and have a discussion on outsourcing, looking at both internally and externally. Now I'm going to be doing a very quick poll, and by the time if you have any comments, questions, you can speak or you can put it on the chat as well. The poll is on your screen right now. I hope you're seeing the poll. It would be great to know which service is outsourced in your country, or if the entire supply chain is actually managed by the government agency like a central medical store, a logistics management coordinating unit, LMU, LMCUs. In Nigeria, there are a lot of LMCUs as well. So it would be good to understand. And if there are any comments, please don't hesitate to speak, ask questions as well. Okay, 8 votes so far. So far, majority of people are saying that transportation is outsourced. And then there are about 5 participants who are also saying that everything is managed by one organization. Okay. So let me end the poll here. I don't want to take too much time on the poll, but just you can see the results on your screen now. So majority are saying that transportation is outsourced, but then there are some participants who are also saying that there is no outsourcing. Okay, so we will see a mixed bag everywhere, and it's quite common. But we believe that probably in the years to come, outsourcing may become much more prevalent, much more popular, since the donors are also looking at it very keenly. For example, I know for a fact that very recently, Global Fund, who's probably working in all the countries, all the participants who are being represented here, Global Fund probably is present or funding products in all of the countries. I know for a fact that Global Fund has been working on something called outsourcing toolkit, where they're going to now approach the countries and work with them in creating these outsourcing structures. Because Global Fund and other donors, they've also realized that in many countries, outsourcing can be done, which may lead to improvement of service delivery. And it's actually been done in several countries using donor funds. And in the case study report that we have sent you, there are several examples of that as well. So moving on quickly, there were no questions so far, but if there are any other questions, don't hesitate to ask. I can stop anytime. That's not a problem. But let's quickly go to the next section, where now that we looked at the conditions for outsourcing, the key point you can ask is, okay, these are the conditions for outsourcing, but how do we actually manage it? What is the process involved in managing outsourcing? Yeah, Isiola, you're absolutely right that some processes might be outsourced and some are managed within the organization, and that is what we are saying, that within supply chain there are so many functions that can be outsourced, and sometimes some functions are outsourced and some are kept internal. So that's very true. But the key question is, if we are going for outsourcing, then how do we manage it? Okay, so it's a outsourcing is again, when we talk about supply chain, one of the key functions is procurement. In procurement, how do we proceed? We create our requirements, we ask for bids, and then we issue contracts. Now, those are contracts for products. When we are looking at outsourcing, this is the same procedure with the difference that these are contracts for service. Okay, so the outsourcing provider is not giving you any product, rather they're giving you a service. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is write the terms of reference or the scope of this service, which in turn goes in the RFP. Now, if you remember from a procurement session, we looked at these terms. We looked at what is ITB, what is RFQ, and what is RFP. RFP is request for proposal. Requests for proposals are issued when we are looking for services, and outsourcing providers, they provide you service. And that's when you create and publish your RFPs, which based on your selection, again here as well, we need to have the QCBS selection, where we have one side quality, which is dependent on the criteria that you have asked, and some of the criteria we will look at when we look at the Uganda case study. Okay, so we look at the criteria that your outsourcing providers must address, must fulfill, and then we look at the cost. Okay, so using a QCBS formula, you select your vendors and then you agree on those KPIs and service levels. Okay, so those KPIs and service levels must be mentioned in the RFP at the contracting stage. But then even after contracting, as part of the monitoring, you must have a clear discussion with the vendors on those KPIs, on those service levels. And then throughout the contract period, whatever is the contract period, you should monitor those KPIs so that you monitor the performance of your vendor. And the key here is transparency and communication. And in communication, we also talk about visibility. So if you are managing your vendor, you should have full visibility of what is happening and when. Okay, so it should not be like a case that, okay, you have created a distribution plan, but you don't really know when your vendor is actually picking the products and is delivering it to the facilities. You don't really know. You must have clear visibility on the processes that your third party vendor is actually doing. Okay, so this is how you manage outsourcing. It is just like managing a project or managing any other organization for that matter. So the way you manage your pharmaceutical vendors is exactly how you manage your outsourcing providers, with a small difference is that the pharmaceutical manufacturers are actually supplying you products, whereas here they're supplying you services. Okay, so that's the small difference. There are some points coming in the chat. Let me quickly read them. Yeah, it's true. One of the points for Wilson has talked about is that if you outsource some of your functions, it will also have an impact, in the economy of your country. Yeah, so it will provide probably jobs. It will, make an impact on economy. It may also have some point impact on a GDP as well. Okay, because money is changing hands. When money changes hands, when money is circulated, that affects your economy as well positively. Okay, so that's a valid point as well. So moving on, There is a small snippet that we wanted to share with you. Again, this is from the case study, from the Gavi case study document, which we have shared with you, that there are some organizations who are afraid of outsourcing. One, probably because they might lose control, but there are some genuine reasons as well. So let's take a look at this case from Mozambique. So when asked to these central medical stores that why wouldn't you outsource, they state that the outsourced providers cost more than operating an in-house fleet, while the service level is also poor. However, the definition of service level isn't always clear. Okay, and when explored further, the interviewer realized that what service level means, that the transport provider should always be ready whenever being called. Now, do you think that's a professional way of treating your providers? Maybe not. On the other hand, when this question is asked to the transport providers, they say that they provide most competitive rate, but that is dependent on vehicle utilization. Now, that's a very fair point. Now, if you remember the WFP case example, let me go back to that very quickly. Here, there is a point that logistics service provider charge per metric ton. Okay, so they're charging by weight. So which means that in a truck, there is, of course, there is a utilization factor, that at a particular weight, that the fuel consumption is appropriate, and that's how they would charge a specific rate on that particular weight allocation. Now, if that weight allocation is less, they're still actually using the same amount of fuel. So which means they're losing money. So if every time you ask for the provider and send half filled trucks, that's actually a loss making business for the service provider. If you're not utilizing their vehicles properly, then it will be a loss making venture for the providers. And what will they do eventually? They will increase the prices for you, because they're not going to pay it out of their own pocket, they're going to charge it to you. So you are in turn paying more for the service. Okay, then the other point that this snippet says that the CMS wanted flexibility from transporters because pick and pack was manual and they cannot avoid delays. Critics always say that private transport is more expensive and private sector providers are getting rich. However, successful execution of efficient service is dependent on a discipline. Okay, when we talk about discipline, again we talk about those agreed KPIs, those agreed service levels. However, those service level and KPIs are not just for the provider, it's also for the CMS or the authority who's actually managing that vendor, because their work depend on you as well. Okay, they cannot always be ready, like they say, always be ready at the beck and call of the authority. There has to be a good relationship as well between both the parties, and discipline amongst both the parties as well, if outsourcing has to be successful. Okay, so it is very important that if you outsource, it doesn't mean that your outsourcing provider is going to be your slave, or be an organization whom you can just treat like any like your servant or something. So they are your partners, you need to treat them as partners, which means if there are some KPIs for them, there are similar KPIs for you as well. Okay, so there has to be a healthy relationship between both the partners if that outsourcing process has to be successful. Okay, so this is what this snapshot is trying to say, and this is very important because some places outsourcing is not successful because of these reasons, because they think that okay, if outsourcing is done, then that provider is going to do everything for them, which is not true. The provider is only going to do what is written in the contract as per the service levels agreed with you, And there are some responsibilities on your side as well, which you have to fulfill before the provider can take over. Okay, so it is very important to understand these points. And right now, let's look at very quickly to the Uganda case study. So if you have the document with you, it is on page 46 of the document. Are there any comments, questions? I see some points being put on the chat. So I guess Gilles is taking a look at that. There are some mention allocated to Gilles as well. So I'm not looking at that. Romeo has some points here.
Yeah, I mean, just to mention on the exchanges we did on the impact of outsourcing to the private sector and to more generally to the context. I think really it's a trend. I mean, we've discussed that. It's a trend that there is a large demand for that, for more and more privatization.
Yeah.
And going to private. It's good. It's an opportunity also for everyone who is involved in supply chain to think about, where is the next step that you want to take, and because that's a big thing. And we're mentioning WFP, who was put all its reliability on supply chain. Now you can see big company. I mean, the biggest, some of the biggest, the richest man in the world has just created. One of the richest men, Jeff Bezos, is getting rich just because he has succeeded in very good logistics with Amazon. So supply chain and procurement is really getting something which is very big. And yes, and just before you move to the Uganda example, I mean, one thing when you go through the Uganda example, which is also very interesting, that one of the questions they were looking at partners who had financial stability if they are paid late. So that builds a bit on what Sanjay was saying. They anticipate that they are not going to be able to pay, every month regularly their supplier. It's a big issue. It's a big issue because those people are doing business for a living. But that's an interesting point also. It's important to develop the private sector. It's important to be able to pay for the service that you're getting.
Absolutely. No, I mean the logistics providers are not a humanitarian organization. Maybe some of them are in some places, but majority of them are for-profit players, and they need to be treated like that. Okay, so this case example is very interesting because of a few facts that in Uganda there is a last mile delivery happening, and it is being managed by a single organization without any regional centers. There may be some cross docking happening in certain parts, but there are no regional centers. There is only a central national medical store, which directly either sends to their districts, and from districts it goes to the health facilities. So NMS does not really have any other. Maybe now they have a couple of them, but last I checked, that they only had one warehouse, and they were doing the entire operation from that one warehouse. Although you can say that Uganda is not a very big country, if you compare it against Ethiopia, it might be very difficult to actually do the entire logistics of the country from the central warehouse. But again, we can look at the cost benefit analysis, geographical reach, and all that. But having said that, it's still an interesting model to see that even if it is a small country, one organization is able to manage the logistics of the entire country. Okay, so that's
one thing that I would like to add, because there are two elements very specific. I had the chance to visit NMS last year, so we've been taking through the entire process, and there are two elements which I think are very specific and which are also a source of success. First, they've been given management of the budget for procurement, so they have full responsibility. It's a government decision. NMS has a full responsibility. Every year they are given the entire annual budget for procurement of medical equipment and medicines. So everything is under their responsibility. And once they have that, they have the opportunity based on previous consumption. They are the one who are allocating an annual plan of delivery. So every year they make an annual plan of what is going to be delivered to the facilities throughout the year. Once they have done this plan, they publish the plan and they send it to all the facilities. And they tell them that week, that day, you're going to be delivered that quantity. So each facility has this. So those two elements, that they are in charge of the budget. And second, that they can send an annual plan of what they are going to deliver to all the facilities, which doesn't mean they cannot be flexible if there are urgency and needs which are arising. But at least they have these two elements which are very, very helpful and put them in a very strong, powerful position, because now, once they have that, they can organize the logistics and the procurement with their third party. So that's a very, very interesting place to look at, very interesting organization. And yeah, I know not all countries have the same constraints. Princely,
quickly, please.
Okay, let me just take it very fast and snap. In the context of the CBC health services, transportation is not done at night. Everything that has to do with transportation is done during the day. Now, when I look at the Ugandan model, I realize that the private logistics or the LSP, the private LSP were not given performance-based risks and rewards. I don't know why they refuse to do that. Because if you look at in the context whereby, let me take an example. There are patients on the what? Maybe there's an outbreak of cholera in the hinterlands, and they need water. They need to drink water. There is water in the warehouse for transportation, but it could reach the children only in 48 hours. And the driver decided to deliver it at that station in the hinterlands within 24 hours. That's a risk that needs a reward. But why did they refuse to pay performance risk payment? Why was it not done as per the contract with the private LSPs? That's my question.
Thank you, Princely. I will get back to your question, but let me first introduce the case a bit more. Maybe I'm not sure if everyone has read this case, so let me just give a bit of information and I'll come to your question. So in Uganda, in 2011, there was an issue which they saw where the facilities had severe stockouts and their service levels were very low. Okay, and last mile delivery was a big issue. So they did a pilot with outsourced providers, and that pilot was successful. After that, they selected two providers who are now right now maybe there are two or three. I'm not very sure. It changes in a couple of years. But this is from 2015 to 18, something of that period. But in this case, there were two providers who were covering the entire country, and they saw that 90% of products were being delivered. So that was a huge improvement for them. Okay, so here it follows the same process that we have been talking in the session. Okay, so first they did a pilot to understand the cost benefit analysis. They did to understand what's the cost, what are the benefits. They also looked at what kind of logistics, what kind of transport model would be best. Would it be a single model, multimodal models? So here, if you see, they are using a multimodal solution where there are trucks, there are bicycles, there are boats, based on the conditions that are required. Okay. Then those providers are visiting the districts and the health facilities in a bi-monthly manner. So they create their schedules, they get the distribution schedules, and based on that, they service those facilities. Okay, the selection was based on a thorough process in the RFP, and the key elements were the capability of last mile logistics, to see if they had relevant pharmaceutical expertise, having done background checks, understanding financial position, because you see in government systems payments are often late and it's everywhere. I mean, we can't do anything about it because it has to go through 10 different channels before anyone can be paid. So sometimes there can be delays. Okay, so you don't want, although it's slightly unfair to the provider, but you also don't want services to be disrupted if you are slightly late, if you have promised that payments will be made in a particular range of time. Okay, Then understand the scale. Okay, could they provide a minimum of 5 vehicles of the varying sizes required to manage access restrictions? Okay, so you also need to look at what kind of vehicle will fit into what kind of facility. Okay, some facility may only be able to manage a motorcycle, for example. They can't even manage a small car or a pickup truck. Okay, so you need to look at that as well. And then of course NMS is the contractor, or rather the organization which is contracting. So they can ask these questions like if the contractor would be flexible in meeting their demand, variable demand. So, but the good thing is all these were asked in the RFP process than once the contract had begun. Okay, so if you ask these questions in the RFP process, it is still okay. I mean, it's not okay, but it's still fine that at least you are keeping your providers informed that you have these challenges. So what that does is that the providers add, into their costs so that they can manage these things. Then of course the terms of reference also included the issues of distribution, like usage of correct equipment, product care requirement, driver uniforms, proof of delivery, and responsibility for losses and damages. Okay, so all these things were taken into account while going for the contract. Now, eventually, they looked at a lead time of 5 working days. So once the NMS would, create a distribution schedule and give the products to the providers, within 5 working days, those products should reach their intended destination. Okay, so which means here to deliver an entire district. So for an entire district, it has to be done in 5 working days. So it was agreed in advance. Then if you see later, they say that they also brought vaccines, which means that the providers also had cold chain capabilities as well. And eventually, if you see the summary, it said that they had a huge improvement in service delivery. 98% of products were delivered, while before 2011, majority of the products were being lost. Okay, they had a multimodal solution. There were annual contracts with a set terms of reference, and there was visibility and transparency. Now, in this case, their key objective was to improve service delivery, reducing stockouts, and maintain condition of product throughout the transport. This case study does not really talk about if the cost of the outsourced operation was less or more than the self-management. So it doesn't talk about it, but that's a valid question that you can ask when you are going for an outsourcing service, or if you have an outsourcing service. Now, coming to your question, Princely, about performance-based risk or reward, I mean, I don't know the answer to be sure. There can be various reasons for that. Now, one of the reasons that I know in the government systems and also with donor systems, that they generally work with fixed contract amounts, okay, which they calculate even before your contract has begun. So, for example, whichever way you look at it, if the entire contract duration, for the entire contract duration, you would need to pay, let's say, $10,000 to your vendor, then you won't add on top of it any performance-based risk or reward, because it's difficult to know at the beginning of the contract how much would that be. And generally in public contracts, you don't put ranges that, okay, it can be this range to that range, which in private sector it's quite easy to do. But in public sector, with financial allocation happening at 2, 3, 4 tier level, it sometimes get a bit messy. So that can be one of the reasons. The second reasons can be that they wanted to, if they also didn't have any kind of liquidated damages or uh, you know uh, uh, penalties for late deliveries sometimes. So they did not put those clauses, and that's why they also did not put any clauses for reward as well. I mean, if deliveries were supposed to be done within 5 days, if they did it in 3 days, there were no reward. But if the deliveries were supposed to be done in 5 days and they did it in 6 days, there was no penalty as well. Okay, so it goes both sides as well. although I don't know the exact reason why they did what they did. The case study also doesn't say, but the main thing is that the standards were upheld throughout the process, and 98% of the products were being delivered on time. So that's more important in this case, rather to know that if they why there was not risk or reward performance based incentives or not, which I tell you generally we don't see in public sector. I've very uh, very rarely I've seen performance based incentives in public sector. Private sector is quite common. Okay. So this is the one case example I've talked from the report that I've shared with you. There are other very nice, very informative examples that you can read and reflect on your own country as well. It's a very good document. You will get a lot of ideas reading that. Okay, just quickly reading some of the chats. Tedele is saying in Ethiopia, LMD, logistics management distribution, probably. I'm not sure. It started as a pilot at one IPSA branch to distribute directly to all health facilities monthly. There are encouraging improvements in availability and supply chain efficiency, but still outsourcing has challenges. Private LSP capacity and monitoring their performance are among the challenges. Absolutely, that's true, Tedele. Someone said somewhere, I think Kenfrey said it's a real job. And okay, last mile delivery, LMD is last mile delivery. It's a real job, and it, like Gilles said, if even if you are outsourcing, it doesn't mean that you have stopped working. You still need to manage that vendor, because that vendor is an extension of you. You have to manage your extension. You cannot just leave them be and okay, let them do whatever they want. Okay, and managing and monitoring is a key thing. And like I said, in the internal conditions, that unless you are ready to do that, outsourcing may not be that beneficial as you thought it to be. Okay. The key question, Gilles, if you want to take over for this key question.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to everybody, because so far I think we've had a very good participation and very, very good engagement. Now the key question is about the money. So is it cheaper or is it not cheaper to outsource? Do you have some specific views on that? Is there a direct financial gain due to outsourcing or not?
Instead of asking, instead of answering, okay, yes. Jamini, go on.
Yeah, I would say it's will be cheaper because of economic of scale, and they are specializing in that activity and providing for their services for many clients. So the unit cost will be low. Because of that, the outsourcing will be cheaper.
Good point, Chamini.
Yeah, it's true that the economy of scale that a third-party logistics can do should allow them to reduce their cost, and also sometimes because they can be also more flexible in how they manage their workforce. That can also help them to reduce some of the cost. Any other suggestion?
Yes, thank you, Gilles. I also think outsourcing is cheaper, especially when you're talking about transportation, because in many government organizations, you have vehicles and drivers who are on being paid on a permanent basis, but their work is only seasonal, and also vehicles that are not in use during some seasons, and they only get engaged once there's an activity. So the rest of the time they're idle, and that is costly to the organization. So I think when managed properly, like the way we have seen, it is cheaper in the long run to outsource. Thank you.
That's the $1 million point you have mentioned, Kenfrey, when managed properly.
And also, I mean, I think it should not be the aim. I think the aim, what was mentioned a bit earlier about moving from a fixed cost to variable cost is already a huge gain for any organization in terms of financial management. So once this has been achieved, the financial gain should not be the main thing. I mean, making it cheaper should not be the main driver. Although once everything's agreed, the negotiation of the contract should be very tough. It's a very tough moment. You need to understand why you need to break down the cost, and your third-party logistics needs to be able to demonstrate why they are invoicing you that cost per unit. And it's a big work. If they've not done the work and they've just made up a figure like that, then you need to challenge them because they are not doing their job properly. You don't want them to underestimate the cost they will charge you, because they will run out of business very quickly if they are not able to do that. And you don't want them to overcharge you because you're not here, to make their business run just by yourself. So I think really this idea of cost beyond what you get is really to get the win-win situation. And I can just advise that every time if you are involved in an outsourcing project, make sure the breakdown of cost and why the cost is this particular cost, everything is very clearly listed, so that when you negotiate with the third-party logistics, or if you are in the third-party logistics, when you negotiate with the client, you can really negotiate on each point that you've put in your price matrix.
Yeah. So, John Richard, you want to say something? Yeah, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
I am joining my voice to the rest of the members on board to say outsourcing would be cheaper. And now everything boils down to the last mile delivery here. And you come down to communities in enclaves. Some are in little islands within the country. And you imagine that you've brought goods maybe somewhere around the town of Douala and Island. You don't have that experience to climb onto a boat and start riding to Manuka Island, or you are going to Mbisa Island in the Northwest region. You must have to outsource. And then when you do that, you are certain that your goods will reach that destination because you are committing them into the hands of those who are experienced in the water much more than you. Again, at the end of the day, it will be cheaper, especially given that the patients who are down there in the hinterlands will get the products that they need within record time. That's my contribution.
Thank you. And I think the point you raised at the end is about being effectiveness, efficiency. So yes, the price is a driver, but efficiency and impact should be the main driver.
So at the end of this session, let us ask a question to all of you. There's a poll which is going to be on your screen. Tell us, what do you think, which function, supply chain function in our country will perform better if it is outsourced? So I'm launching the poll now. It would be good to hear your opinion on this, since you know your countries better than us. Someone has very quickly jumped and casted their vote on procurement. Okay, if there are any other questions, comments, very welcome. We are at the end of this session. If not, then I will go to a couple of administrative things and we will close this session tonight. Yeah, most people are saying that it would be cheaper. Terele, you have raised your hand. Please, you can speak.
Yeah, I want to raise one question regarding outsourcing.
Please.
Can this outsourcing be given to another governmental organization. For example, in Ethiopia, Ministry of Health and Ethiopian Public Health Institute outsourced the sample transportation to the Ethiopian Postal Service Enterprise. And so it has been managing in such a way, but can we say that this is really outsourced? Thank you, Bertie.
I think yes, we would call it outsourcing. If I mean, if the point of outsourcing, first we call it is if we were doing that activity first, and then we decided to give it to someone else. Now, if EPHI has ever done the activity that Ethiopian Postal Service is doing, then that would definitely be outsourcing. However, you can still call it your provider. So your this organization, shipping or postal service, they're still your provider. So you can still call them your outsourced provider. It's a kind of outsourcing only. Gilles, your take?
No, I think I totally agree with you. It's an external, it's an outsourcing. You need to put in place all the communication practice, how you share the data, following up, information sharing, reporting costs also, because you'll have different cost units. So yeah, I think it's a full outsourcing project.
There are few participants who have not voted yet. It would be nice to hear from you. I'll just wait for 10 seconds and then close the poll. But let me quickly come to this slide so that I don't waste any more time. So just wanted to let you know that as we are at the final stretch of this course, and I can't believe it's already 4 weeks. I don't know what you think. I thought we were just getting started now, because now most of you have started to speak, but unfortunately we are almost at the end. So the team competition and the individual leaderboards. For the team competition, the final reconciliation would happen on 14th of June. For the team competition, the scores will only be counted until the end of module 7. Okay. Once you finish the course, as if you remember in the first session, we had discussed that each team would develop reports on this course, on what you learned from this course, what your experience was. Each team should prepare one report from their teams. To prepare those reports, we are happy to organize a discussion session like we had done for the week 3 assignment. We will give you some dates, and then whatever you choose, we will then organize the session for you. So we will put that as a discussion in the platform, and you can respond accordingly. On the individual leaderboards, the final reconciliation will be on the 16th of June. We are giving a bit more time to some participants who were a bit late. But if anyone wants to compete in the leaderboard and wants us to put their scores as part of the leaderboard, they need to finish their entire course, including the final assessment, by 16th June. From 16th June until 20th June, the course will still be accessible. If you are still behind, you can still finish the course, and we will still give you the certificate if you finish the course by 20th of June. But if you don't finish your course until 20th of June, which means that going through all the 7 modules, finishing all the quizzes, all the assignments which are mandatory, and if you don't finish it by 20th of June, then unfortunately for this cohort, you will not receive the certificate. And then we will discuss with you, how to receive your certificate, how to achieve a certificate in any other next cohort. But for this cohort, if you finish by 20th of June, only then you will receive your certificates. Okay. Next, We want to organize a final certification ceremony for all of you. You have worked really hard throughout these 4 weeks. And we want to show our appreciation to you through this online certification ceremony. Now, unfortunately, we can't meet. It would have been great if all of us were sitting together in one room. But I think through Zoom, we would try to emulate that environment. And in that certification ceremony, we would want to invite everyone to show their certificates, to talk about their experience, and also have another final chance to talk to your peers, talk with us, share any issues and everything. Okay. We would also try to bring in a keynote speaker. We are looking at a couple of people, and we will finalize it, and then we will inform you who's going to be the keynote speaker for this graduation ceremony. Some of the possible dates are 22nd or 24th June, but depending, we also need to look at the dates by the keynote speaker. And then as soon as it is finalized, we will get back to you. We will send you the Zoom links, calendar invites and everything. We'll put it on the platform as well. Okay. And finally, as you will finish the course, you will find a course evaluation just before the assessment. We request all of you to finish it. There are 8 or 9 questions in that evaluation form that will give us an idea of your experience of this course, how you found it, some things that you really liked, and some things that you did not like and would like us to improve, so that in future, when your friends, when your colleagues come for this course, we can tell them that, based on your feedback, we change certain things, and the course is even more, it's enriched even more and has even more features. Okay, so this is the last slide of this session. Let me quickly share the results of the previous poll. Most people say that last mile transportation and reverse logistics should be outsourced, but there are some people who also would like to see procurement function being outsourced as well. Okay, so that's a very good thing to see. So majority in favor of transportation, but some in favor of procurement as well. Now, just before I launch the last feedback poll, Gilles, over to you for some last words as we are nearing the end of this course.
And we'll have the final last words when we do the ceremony. So we'll have more time to discuss that. But really, I think today I really enjoyed this particular session. I think everybody, I don't know if it's a subject or if it's because it's the 4th week. But really, I want to thank you all. It's nice to see all the faces, also people who are showing up, and I see more videos today that we've seen in the past. So, and the contribution also are very good. The outsourcing is a very important subject. But beyond that, I think, beyond the subject itself, I think the desire from everyone to share their knowledge is really important. So really, thank you very much for your contribution today. And we'll have more opportunity to discuss about the entire course. But yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining. We have received the votes. Everyone thinks it was either excellent or good. If you haven't cast your vote, please do so. It really helps us. It cheers us up as well, because we prepare very hard to present this session for you for in hour and a half, but a lot of effort goes behind the scenes as well. We hope that throughout these 4 weeks, you have been enjoying the course. It was something new for you, not just in terms of content, but in terms of how the course was designed, how it was delivered on the platform. And we hope that, once this course is over, you won't abandon the hive. You will still be there. Keep showcasing your opinions, your knowledge on different matters, and there will be other courses, and we will announce a few of them during the certification ceremony as well. So with that, I would close today's session just after sharing the results, which is on your screen, and we thank everyone who has participated today. We are seeing more people now than who were there in the first session, which is very good. We would have hoped only that more people started the course together, so that it would have been a more collective environment, from the very beginning rather than just now. Okay, great. Thank you so much. You have a good day, good evening, good night, and we meet you again in the certification ceremony. But we're always there on the platform, so if you have any issues, don't hesitate to reach out to us on the platform, and we will get back to you as quickly as we can. With that, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye, everyone.